statewide educator career ladder. So those are really the 3 points we need to be mindful about. And so we allowed it about 20 minutes for us to have this conversation. If it goes over a short, that's fine. But we really wanted your feedback, if you look into the agenda, to kind of plan out what do we want to talk about, to pick a consistent date and time. Also, Patricia, Devora, Brian, if you want to be the facilitator of the conversation, definitely let us know so that we can actually share this work and keep it moving. I know for this particular meeting, I wanted to make sure, and John co-signed with this, that we actually, again, set our agenda for the year. And then 2, I was interested in bringing forward to you all the conversation about the diversity report. If you're not aware, that is due to all by all of the LEAs to the AIB December 1st. I think it's the AIB, or it might be another governing body. So with that said, I will open the floor up to propose one, if it's okay if we schedule the second Tuesday of every month from 4:30 to 5:30.
I know this day and time of the week works great for me. Thursday evenings are tough for me, but Tuesday, this is good for me personally.
Rachel, do you know our student member obviously today is a conflict with her with this
Right.
with the member being able to get on at 5. Do you know if that's a regular Tuesday thing or if normally
Unfortunately,
4:30
I
could
don't have
work?
any other information on
Okay.
that just yet, but she will be joining a little bit later today. So we might be able to circle back to that. And in the meantime, I can also check the AIB calendar to see if that would fit routinely as well.
Fantastic.
Trisha, Devora, so far, will second Tuesday of every month from 4:30 to 5:30 work?
That sounds fine for me. Yeah.
Okay. And if you all want to take a look, I just dropped in, if everyone was in agreement, what those dates would be. And so if we wanted to just start using this rolling agenda, and I'm happy to take notes, John or Brian, Patricia, Devore, you want to lead the conversation in what topics might you want to consider, so that if there are invited guests or who we want to invite to be a part of the conversation, we can do that as well. I did not do December just because, that's always a hard month with holidays and things like that. So after this November 7th, if you want to do December, that's a group decision. I'm indifferent. But then our next one would be January 9th. So what might a topic be? And who actually would like to take the lead in facilitating the conversation? So I'm going to shift gears to do notes, and I think the first question would be, did we want to meet in December? I appreciate Patricia smiling at me.
I mean, I think that it might be better to take December off, given so much that happens right between the Thanksgiving holiday and the winter break for everybody. That might be as well. I know Rachel alluded to looking at the AIB committee as a whole. That might be a chance for us in December to attend that meeting and sort of get caught up with them as well.
I can add in here that just looking ahead on the calendar to the second Tuesday in December, that we do have time. We could fit this time in and could hold that meeting at that time if the committee would like to. It might also be helpful just to add a little bit of context to kind of the work underway and what's happening in the next month, or 2 months really. The local school districts will soon be seeing a draft of the template for what's required in their March 15th submission. And it's, it's still a work in progress and we're still finalizing the template, but there might be an opportunity for each of the advisory committees to provide some input on some of that. That could be done in a meeting, could also be done one-on-one with, like we've done in the past, with individual members if they have time. You'll recall that kind of this time last year, that becomes a big focus of the work for a bit of the winter, is supporting our LEAs and state agencies with the development of their initial plans. One change this year, the state agency plans are going to be due later in the year. I think it's June. And so the LEA plans will be due in March. And so that's going to be a topic of conversation for a lot of our school district partners. And so there may be some content to be looking at in this time frame.
Thank you, Rachel. Really quick question though, or point to add on to that as we finalize whether we want to meet in December. If we keep the second Tuesday, January 9th is when we would come back. So that's still pretty early in January. Would that work?
January 9th at this time works logistically on the calendar. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So Patricia, Brian, DeVore.
For December, I don't mind. I think as long as it's like the earlier part of the month, and not go past that, because that's when everything starts happening with the holidays, I think.
My only input, I'd be fine to meet either way. I guess I'd sway towards the side of not meeting during December, just because looking at how you guys kind of projected out the meetings, I think even taking a break in December, we'll still get together 7 times by June, which seems, just going off last year, I think we probably met 3 or 4 times. So just the intentionality going into it, I think that 7 meetings, we can be very productive, while also giving ourselves, because the way I see it, there's almost like a little homework assignment for when we come together in January. So, the time we would have given in December, we can shift to just make sure that when we do launch that January 9th meeting, we've spent time in December, we didn't meet, but it kind of fuels that meeting. So I'd be okay with that.
I'm okay either way.
Okay. Justin, do you have a voice in this, or are you just an observer?
I'm available in December if that's what the committee decides, but I definitely agree with the rest of the comments that it's fine to wait until January to discuss more.
Okay.
Like it's a lot more to discuss in January, so that's fine.
Okay, so if most of it sounds like everyone would be okay if we waited to January, because you're right, we will have December homework. Okay. So we're going to take December off. So in January, it sounds like topics will be definitely the diversity report. Will have been submitted by all LEAs, which is something to think about. A topic could also be, you said, Rachel, the template will be out for the local LEAs?
A draft version is coming out very soon, and then it will be finalized and released, and the same with the criteria for success document, an updated version of that.
And so then we can actually have some discussion about that. So that could be a January 9th topic in preparation for on March 15th, 2024, all of the LEAs will have to submit their blueprints. I would encourage you if you have not looked at what the LEAs submitted last year, that maybe you take a look at that. My PGCPS family, I'm happy to send you an email so you have the link on what we submitted and you can see that. But it might be helpful if you look at some other school districts to bring some thoughts back and how we might be able to advise the AIB on what we see are helpful and what might be something that may not be helpful.
Rachel, quick question on that. Is the only way to get access from our local LEAs, or is there a folder or a place where we as committee members can review or access some of the materials that have been shared?
All of the 2023 submissions?
Yeah.
Okay, I can drop a link here to the website, our website. It's available for public, it's available for the committee. It right now we have in multiple places. You can access the original submission in March, the feedback that they received from both MSDE and the AIB, and then their updated submissions that led to the approvals. And you can see the feedback that was provided when they were approved. We had a few districts that were conditionally approved. Those have subsequently been approved now, but you can see all of that documentation. So I'm going to drop you the link to the place where you can find it, like click on your county and see all of this, rather than me giving you the link that says click here for this and here for that and here for this. So I'll drop a link in just a minute so that you can find it all in one place.
Perfect. Justin, was that the link that Rachel was going to drop? I saw you drop one.
It's the like overall link, and so you would have to click for your individual counties. So if you want,
Okay.
I guess if that's what Rachel's going to do, individual counties, then yeah, that's
Well,
different.
Justin, that's perfect. If you go to that page and you scroll down on the left-hand navigation bar, click LEAs, and in there you'll see your county, and it's just one more layer into the page that he sent. So that's you're there. You just click one more time in, and every county will show up as a folder that you can click into. And it's helpful, just as a side note, the way that it's currently organized due to Google is look at the dates. So that, look for the March 15th submission. It was submitted in March. And then you'll see kind of the feedback folder and that, but the dates are
I
kind
got to
of
do this
helpful.
in the dining room because the internet keeps going out.
The
So you gotta
dates are
turn that
kind of
TV off.
helpful when some of the titles of the documents look similar.
Okay. So for January 9th, it looks like we have 2 topics. Does anyone want to lead that discussion? Or do we even want to pick someone to lead the discussion? Bringing me back to my teacher days in those wait times.
I'm going to raise a question just for people to think about, but one of the tasks way back in summertime, when we had a delayed start to getting our new members appointed to the committees, one of the conversations which may be coming up is also just thinking about the structure and leadership of the team this year. Our AIB board members did ask each of the advisory committees to at least have the conversation. So the decision is up to you as a committee if you would carry on the same leadership structure that you had, or the same people, or if you wanted to cycle different people each time. It's a conversation. So there's no requirement of what the answer is. There's just a request that each of the advisory committees has that conversation. And I know your team was also very committed to making sure that we had the new members in place also in having that conversation. So that may contribute to the answer, or it may be a side conversation.
So I appreciate that, Rachel, because I think that there are a couple ways that we can consider leadership. So Christy and I, as chair and vice chair, and Christy, kudos so much to you for helping take the lead, have sort of done a lot of the organizational skills. and the organization of the structure. I've been on other committees where we sort of rotate the lead and who's doing the role, as sort of what Christy's alluding to. So we could do that structure, or certainly if there are others who are interested in being chair or vice chair, you could either share your interest here or share your interest privately. We can make a vote. But we don't want anyone to think that the only way that you can lead a session is by being chair or vice chair. Because we know that, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate that. And thank you, Rachel. Yes, that is one of the topics that I was actually going to ask that we consider. But definitely making sure that we spread the wealth about being the person who leads the agenda and working with the AIB, so that you actually have an experience of what that is like and deciding if that is something, you want to take on moving forward. So that is one of the reasons why we were asking, what do we want the agenda to look like? So if anyone is interested in leading the January 9th conversation, that would be great. If you all want us to just move on to our topics for February, and John and I will keep doing this, we are here to serve. So anybody want to lead January 9th?
Sure, you can put me in there to lead January 9th.
Look at that, Brian. You have warmed my heart. Thank you. Okay. January 13th.
February 13th.
Oh, February 13th. Thank you. Does anyone want to lead that conversation, be the facilitator? But two, also, are there any topics that you want that we as a group want to consider, just because that will be the month before the report is due in March? So I'm sure there'll be lots of questions and wonderings from the various LEAs. But does anybody want to be the facilitator and have the pleasure of leading that? Patricia, was that like a small head shake of a no?
No, I'm gonna put myself in May and June, just because I do the after school program. And so today,
Okay.
for whatever reason, everybody picked their kids up on time, so I was able to make it home. But I'll put myself down for May and or June.
And I think, Christy, were you the career ladder implementation was more placeholder, or did you think about?
Yes.
Okay.
They're just placeholders.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
I would be, actually, before I say Devora, are there any topics in particular for March, April that you would be interested in facilitating or leading?
I guess it depends what we're talking about on that date. Like for instance, objective number 1 here I'm looking at, and like that's really an important topic. It's I mean, something like that I'm willing, to take the lead on. To recruit and support high quality and diverse teachers to meet workforce needs. So I guess it just it just depends what we're actually doing around what particular date. And also I wanted to kind of listen in to get a feel of, what you all like, how you all pretty much run things, I guess. Were you all on this committee last year as well, or like how does that go?
Deborah, I could give you a real quick kind of rundown. Last year was the inaugural year for each of the four advisory committees. While they were appointed in the summertime, we had like a kickoff meeting in September, and then each of the four advisory committees was allowed to determine their structure and how they wanted to run meetings. The request from the AIB is that each committee meet at least once per quarter, and the committee gets to determine the topics that are most timely, most important, most in need of conversation as they see it. To help inform that, each committee was selected by the subcommittee to have really good representation from all of the different stakeholders as best as we could, with having 6 members. So we hope that the 6 members of each committee represent both the state, but also the topics that are in there. And so this year we had two people step down, our student member and one other member, when their terms expired, and everybody else was on the team last year. The one area that I see kind of missing in terms of voice would be our institutions of higher ed. And so they have a critical role here in Pillar 2, and I know they've been working with the AIB on many partnerships. So one thing that we want to do is probably consider, they're willing to come as guests to the meetings anytime you want. But we might want to think about what role they might play, both our community colleges and our four-year institutions, especially as we think about things like TAM, the Teacher Academy of Maryland, and some teacher prep components. So that's one perspective, but in other regards, our subcommittee worked really hard to balance all of the pillars with stakeholders that are representative of all of the work that happens in that pillar. Does that help explain kind of big picture and kind of what the AIB asks for out of the advisory committees?
Yep, yes, it does.
Okay. And the big piece is making sure that we hear input from, if you will, boots on the ground. How's implementation working? What are the hiccups? What are the challenges? What are the wins? How can we help? What do we need to know? We try to be well informed. We try to hear from everybody in the state, but it's really, our advisory committees have done a fabulous job of keeping us aware or bringing things to our attention. So that's the big request, is informed insight and input that's coming from where the actions are really happening. John, question?
Wasn't a question, but I just wanted to follow up exactly on what you said. I would be interested in either March or April helping facilitate a discussion with higher ed and really talking about that teacher pipeline. And I honestly think that March or April might be ideal times to do that. I mean, I know we're hiring all year, but thinking of as our higher ed partners are nearing graduation and moving towards other things. And so I wanted to offer that for at least one of those months.
I put it down for March, sir.
Thank you.
You can start working with your people now. Patricia?
My suggestion, just so we don't do as we did last year, would be if we can just cycle through the 3 objectives. And so if we have January, February, March, April, May, and June, we do 2 months with each objective. I don't know how to space them out based upon whatever is due, but that way we're sure that we're spending time on each of the objectives of our committee.
I love that. So what I will do, because we're going to talk a little bit today about the diversity report. We can follow up more in January. And in February, I did put for the LEAs just what you're hearing about the submissions, because it will be crunch time, but we could also, John, were you thinking higher ed in February and March? Think about what Patricia said, or March and April?
I could go either way.
Okay.
I'm thinking
March and April.
March and April. And what I'm thinking is one of them, so higher ed in March. And then Rachel, you mentioned Teacher Academy of Maryland. I would be really interested in April, still thinking pipeline, but maybe what the LEAs are doing with Grow Your Own's programs, which are connected to higher ed, but hearing it from their perspective as well.
I think that would be a fabulous topic. I think there's a lot of cool things happening around the state, and some of them pilots, some digging into even connections to our friends in Pillar 3 with apprenticeships and things like that. I think it's a really rich topic.
So I think we have it worked out in the sense of in January, the diversity report, we can talk about the draft version template. Brian, you can email me and I'm happy to support you with getting any facilitators or any individuals that you want to come. But you will be the facilitator for the agenda. I did create the agenda in a way that we can bookmark it so that you can just copy paste into the new one. February, we will touch on the blueprint implementation plan. I'm happy to do that one. And then in March and April, John will facilitate higher education discussion, add discussion onto there, and then grow your own programs. And John, you will invite people and facilitate that. And then Patricia, I have you down for career ladder implementation for May and June. And again, I'm happy to help anyone make some connections or get people to come and be a part of these conversations. And Devora, you can just jump in whenever you feel like it. We send each other emails so we can move in that direction. So I think we are good with our topic number 1, and we're only 7 minutes behind.
If I could I just jump in quick? The only thing I'd put out there, I think it's great that we're fleshing out the whole year and like I said earlier, being very intentional about this. And in this discussion, I'm hearing a lot about bringing in voices, bringing in presenters, which is fantastic because to me, that was, some of our more productive meetings last year were when that happened. I will say that an hour-long meeting flies by. And I know last year, some of our meetings felt like the discussion had more to it, and we kind of wound down things just out of respect for time. And I'm not looking at having a congressional hearing until, 11 at night. But at the same time, I'd hate for us to cut conversations short that could contribute. So what about the idea of 90-minute meetings? Just putting it out there.
So I like the idea, Brian. What I wouldn't want to do is commit to 90-minute meetings if it ends up just being us.
Sure. Yes, agreed.
And so maybe we have a little bit of flexibility where, since we have all the dates listed, and we can give Rachel enough 2 weeks notice to post to the AIB website. So as long as hopefully we'll know 2 weeks out what speakers we have and if the meeting needs to be 90 or 60 or 90, but I love the point and completely agree with it.
And I can add on there just with perspective from the 4 advisory committees. Some do it in an hour, some do it in 90 minutes. Sometimes it depends on the topics when there's a really meaty topic. So all of those options are fabulous. One thing that some of the committees kind of found a rhythm to doing, which we did as well at times with Pillar 2, is a pre-meeting with the leadership of the team to kind of iron out some of the administrative components, whether it's helping identify who might be right to invite, or figuring out just what resources the AIB has available and updates, that might help move some pieces of the, maybe Brian, the less exciting conversation, where it gets really deep, where it's, we don't want to end that conversation to a pre-meeting for the structural pieces, and then leave the majority of that hour or 90 minutes for the deep, rich conversation. That's one option if we wanted to kind of set that structure in place.
I like the suggestion from Brian and John that if we do have individuals that'll be coming presenting, I'm definitely for that. But I think if it's us, because we're a very quiet group, that I don't think we necessarily need 90 minutes. But that's why I think you have to decide as a facilitator. But I can say that my calendar is going to now be on hold for those days, so I would be able to be flexible. And even if I think someone has to jump off or jump on, like our student member this year, I think that would be acceptable. So I'm in support if we have facilitators, because we don't want them to cut the conversation short. Okay. So I am going to try to keep us on time and just stick with the topic number 2, which is something that I wanted to just engage us in, because again, last year it was a lot about the career ladder, and my personal opinion was I don't think we gave a lot of conversation to the other components. And as someone who had to work in an LEA and fill out the plan, and then when we had to fill out the plan, we didn't have to really answer specifics about the career ladder, but more about our recruitment and diversity and increasing our nationally board certified teachers and things like that. I wanted to make sure that we get back to just looking at all of the objectives that fall under Pillar 2. So the second one is the diversity report, which I think in some ways also speaks to that objective 1. What are school districts doing to increase diversity? What does that look like? And so I just put that as a topic to see if there might be any, as Rachel said, what we are charged with. And I also put it in the agenda about what are our wins, what are our challenges, what does the AIB need to know to support school districts. I'm just wondering what people thought. Patricia, Justin, DeVore, if you had the opportunity to see the PGCPS diversity report that was submitted. Brian, I don't know if you saw Charles County, and John, I don't know if you saw Montgomery County. But just what might be your thoughts as we prepare? I can just say the PGCPS team is already preparing for our December 1 report.
So I will just say, I think we talked about this maybe one time, but as a person who was recruited to Maryland, and I think I shared with you all, I initially came up and taught over in Queen Anne's County. And what really made the difference for me was the additional support that Queen Anne's County provided. I did not know anything about Maryland. I didn't know anybody in Maryland, and they really created a structure with teachers within the county, administrators within the county, to almost make it like a family scene. I think the county sponsored, felt like they were monthly, but maybe they were bi-monthly or quarterly, just get-togethers. I don't know if the county sponsored or not, don't let me say that. But we had consistent get-togethers with people to support you beyond just bringing me here and giving me a job. And I know in some of the larger counties that may be a little bit challenging, but to recruit someone who is not from this area, and just kind of drop them there and not create a structured way for them to develop relationships is really doing them a disservice. And I want to say, for the most part, it was 9 of us that came up the year I came up. And for the most part, most of us are still in the area. We may not be in that county, but we're still in the area. So I would just really encourage LEAs to look beyond just going to college fairs, offering incentives and things. But once you have people here, what wraparound services are you providing for them so that they do feel supported, not only in their professional life, but also within their personal lives, if it's, whatever that may look like, just to at least give them resources, organizations, things that will continue to foster that support as a whole person and not just the professional piece.
And you think that also contributes or could support LEAs with getting a more diverse population by doing that? Yeah, I agree. Any thoughts to add on to that? John, Brian, have you been able to look at the diversity report for for Charles County?
No, 5:30.
Charles County, yes, I've seen it, and just recently, the HR team presented at one of our board meetings within the last couple months. So there was kind of extended discussion around that. I would echo what Patricia just shared, kind of that anecdotal input of I do think that when we talk about recruitment into our profession, sometimes the headlines are about salaries. Probably the most quoted thing about is salary by whatever month of whatever year. But really, teaching is, as we all know, education is a service profession, which service-minded people, primary motivator is not salary. So sometimes I think there's a disconnect there that we try to talk monetary incentives to people that are looking for a career more on their belief system. And so sometimes I think we might miss opportunities there. And I don't know exactly what majors that might look like. Obviously we want classically trained teachers with all the credentials and experience, but the reality is that we haven't been successful in filling our classrooms that way. So to me, we have to think creatively and think about who are service-minded folks that we should be talking to that maybe haven't felt like we were talking to them in the past.
Our new member joined. Hi, Stephanie. I'm Christy Murphy Baldwin, Chief of Human Resources in Prince George's County. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Hi.
Stephanie, would you mind? I'm John Silke. I'm one of the instructional specialists for secondary math. Would you mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about yourself?
Of course. My name is Stephanie Maseko. I'm a senior at Bowie High School. And I've also worked on school organizations and county organizations for the county's student member of the board for the past 2 years. So I want to be able to help out as much as I can before I graduate.
Stephanie, this is Rachel from the AIB, the policy director. I appreciate you rearranging your schedule today to be able to join us on short notice, and we're really excited to have you on the committee.
Thank you.
Stephanie, not to put you on the spot, but while I'm thinking about that, we were looking at creating a calendar and had thought about the second Tuesday of every month from 4:30 to 5:30. And I understand that you had to rearrange things for today, but we wanted to check with you and see if that time in general would work for you, because we want to make sure that you're able to attend our meetings regularly.
I should be able to do that. That should be able to. Perfect.
Fantastic.
Okay, so and Stephanie, we have an agenda, and we were just touching a little bit on diversity. There's a diversity report that's due by every school system in Maryland to it's the AIB by December 1st. And so we were just having a little conversation about what people may or may not know. I know for us in Prince George's County, our staff diversity to student teacher ratio is 57% of our staff are African American and 55% of our students are African American. But where our diversity issue comes in is our Latinx or Hispanic population. So our student population is about 34%, but from a teacher perspective, I think we're now at probably about 5%, almost 6. So that's one of the diversity challenges we have. We do lots of recruitment trips pre-pandemic to Puerto Rico, to certain parts of Texas and Arizona to recruit. But one of the challenges that we find here is having individuals leave and not, like Patricia, like you said, like when they get here, how do we create an environment to keep them here? Because they, I've had some of our Latinx administrators say, like, do we have anything on our website to say these are specialty grocery stores or these are specialty churches and places that you can go? Because what ends up happening is people get here and then they just feel lost because they have left their family. And then they have to go, they want to go back home. So I think that is something that was an eye opener for me when I received feedback on how are we creating these systems to make people feel welcome. But for me, diversity in Prince George's County is more than just race. It's also gender. 73% of our teachers are female. About 24% of our teachers are males. We do have the highest number in the state of Maryland, but how do we get more males to be interested in teaching? We know it's a female-dominated industry. So these are the conversations that, when we have to write the diversity report that we're thinking about. But I'm sure other districts may have different challenges.
I would also include in that like housing. Like I said, again, I'm gonna stop talking, but they gave you a list of places that rented specifically to teachers. I've been teaching over 20 years, so I'm sure it was at a discounted rate, but there were definitely services that were provided to support you in the transition, not to just, I think like Brian said, the $60,000 is great when you hear about it when you live in Texas or you live in Arizona or Puerto Rico. But when you get here and you can't find an apartment in a decent, safe neighborhood for less than $1,800 a month, depending on where you are, then it becomes a different story. So I would just encourage the entire wraparound services, not just the professional piece, but all of those other components to really make you feel comfortable and create a kind of like a circle or a structure of people that you can talk to and kind of rely on in that journey.
Patricia, to piggyback on that, and it has me wondering, first of all, how many districts are including those types of incentives in their plans? And second of all, how many Board of Educations or district leaders are talking with their county council members about creating incentive programs? I know in Montgomery County, there's been talk of incentive programs for housing around first responders and police officers. And in some of my other community roles, I have strongly advocated that teachers be included in that type of program as well. Housing is definitely an issue. I know from personal experience, many of the great teachers that my daughters had in elementary school moved away because they wanted to be closer to where they lived, and the only places they could afford to live were much farther away from the schools that they worked at. And we're talking about working at, in some cases, Title I or focus schools. So there's a process of losing some of the better teachers from these high needed schools. So thank you for bringing up the housing and the wraparound services. I mean, we talk about the idea of community schools with students. We need to have a similar type of community wraparound support for current and future educators.
I also think that, like, as far as incentives go, also incentivizing, or I guess making it more accessible for current students to be interested in becoming teachers, no matter like where the demographics are, because I know there are parts of Prince George's County that are like heavily like Latinx communities, and if they are encouraged or incentivized to even look into that industry, then we might find some more outcome from that.
Great point.
Yeah, I wanted to add, when I was first hired in Prince George's County, we had, I'll say, the county had those services because I remember I got like so much information. I don't know if it's going on now, but I got like list of apartment complexes with discounts. Like, if you go here and you move here, you'll get 5% off your rent, 10% off your rent. I remember that, and PGCEA, the teachers union, working closely, with the new teachers to give them support. So I think the associations or the unions also play a big role in this, in what they can do to help support the teachers. That was my experience. I really felt like when I came here, I really felt at home. I was made to feel that way.
Good. Being a good steward of our time, we have about 3 minutes before it's 5:30, but I did want to touch on topic number 3. So to close out the LEA reports, they will be due, LEAs will present them in December 1st. So please make sure that you look into what was submitted so that we can kind of unpack and kind of carry on this conversation, so that we can advise the AIB on thoughts and to increase diversity in the state of Maryland. But one of the things, Rachel, if you were able to just answer this very quickly, I did hear that Rachel, the executive director for AIB, had to dismantle some rumors. So if there are any rumors about establishing the career ladder, that would be helpful just for us to know and consider and be a voice for you all. But I think we are still on track for us to have a career ladder ready to go by July 1. And then I did hear from that it was saying that we at least have to have levels 1 through 3. So I did want to give Rachel or Justin or Lisa any opportunities to share with us before we close out any rumors we might help dismantle.
So broadly, that's one of the big jobs of the AIB, is to try to make sure that everybody's on the same page, that everybody's got the same information. Sometimes when there's a lack of information, people go with what they thought they heard or the way they understand it, and sometimes that spreads. I didn't come armed with a list of rumors to be able to address, but I would love to get you some information about that, because there most certainly were. Our team is kind of dividing and conquering on topics, and there is a lot happening right now on Career Ladder. There are some planned convenings coming up, with all LEAs being invited to come to those. And some of that initial work will be making sure that we're all on the same page, that whatever those are, there definitely were some things running around that were making people nervous. And Rachel was able to give some pretty clear guidance, but I'll go back to her and get that, and I'll send it around to the team so that you have that in advance of the continued conversation around this, for the next meeting.
Okay, that's helpful. And Brian, since you are facilitating the next one, if you want to connect and maybe add that to the agenda, that is well within your purview to do that. So in closing, our next meeting is January 9th, 2024. And it'll be facilitated by Brian. And so far, our topics will be the diversity report, which Brian, if you deem maybe something different, I think we are all okay with that. And I think Rachel shared with us to be a draft version template for the LEA blueprint review that we can also, take a look at once we do. Rachel, if you would let us know that it's out there, that we can bring some feedback to our January meeting. And Brian, again, as Rachel shared, and I have confirmed, there are a lot of rumors out there. So I don't want to kick the year off with, making sure we are in a position to support you, Rachel, and dismantling anything related to Pillar 2. Otherwise than that, if there are no questions, comments, or concerns.
I know that we're at time, but I just want to cycle us back real quick. In terms of the conversation of the pillar leadership and moving forward, I know we've identified topic leaders and discussion leaders. John, at one point, we're out of time, I get that. You had potentially mentioned that we could do this in a different method rather than a, on camera kind of thing. So I'm curious, I'm perfectly happy to be the middleman and if people want to email me if they're interested in that, and we can have that conversation and then bring that back to the next meeting. And we've done that with some of the other teams, that if you're interested in a leadership role and would like to just let me know that, then we can facilitate that process, that conversation, not while we're all sitting here together. So if that's how you want to move forward, just putting that out there that I am available to do that if that would help.
I think that might make the most sense. So if anybody is interested in filling a position as I just saw Patricia's note, especially since some had to leave. If anybody is interested in filling a chair or co-chair position for the upcoming year, if you can reach out to Rachel A. and let her know that interest. I can speak for myself. I would not be offended at all if somebody wanted to fill into the chair role. So I think that might be the next step. And then Rachel, you can maybe communicate with Christy and I that there is interest or not interest.
Sure.
And then we can figure out the process to go from there.
My one request would be, since Patricia did need to jump off, if we could just shoot an email, either you or Christy, either one, to the full team to just maybe say that again, so that we, driver's ed's probably got her busy. She's busy for a minute here. That if we can put that back out there for everybody to kind of think about, and if anybody is interested, would it be fair to say today is end of day Tuesday, by Friday, maybe, to let me know, so that we can kind of think about it and bring closure to this by the end of the week?
Sounds good for me.
That works for me. I will make sure I get the email out, if not by tonight, definitely by tomorrow morning. So that gives everybody 48 hours at the least.
Perfect.
Rachel, did you see Brian's chat about having the option to attend the November 17th meeting that was referenced in the agenda? Is that open to everyone?
Let me check and confirm. I'm not sure what the list looks like. I'm not sure. Let me check.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'll get back to you and let you know.
Okay, if there are no other questions, comments, or concerns, it's wonderful to see you all, and we will close out this meeting. All in favor to end? Okay, take care.
Good
Thanks,
seeing
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you
Take
all.
care.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.